Nurse Jamie Smith, who works here at Provident Hospital. Dr. Daniel Hale Williams has been an inspiration to Jamie in many ways. Hello, Jamie.
Hello, thank you for having me today.
Why is it that Dr. Daniel Hale Williams has such an impact on you?
Well, he has had a few astounding accomplishments in his day that just amaze me. After I learned that he performed the first open heart surgery, I decided that I wanted to research him and find out a little more about him. And I was extremely impressed what I found, and so I just kept digging for more information on him, and he has amazed me.
All right, let's hear a little bit of history about Dr. Williams.
Daniel Hale Williams was born on January 18th, 1856 in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, to his mother Sarah and his father Daniel. His parents died when he was 10 years old, so they shipped him off to some family friends in Maryland. While in Maryland, he became a shoemaker's apprentice, and after doing that for a few years, he really didn't like that, so he found some family in Illinois and moved there. While he was there, he worked in the barber business, which is what his father did. He didn't really like that either and decided that going and furthering his education is what he really wanted to do.
Excellent. Can you fill us in on some of his greatest accomplishments?
Oh, I'd be glad to. They're just amazing. Due to the discrimination back in his lifetime, the African Americans were still denied the ability to be admitted into hospitals, and black doctors were refused staff positions. So Dr. Dan, as some of his patients referred to him as, believed that needed to change, and that in itself is amazing to me. Obviously, that was a problem, and we needed to overcome that. So in May of 1891, he opened the first interracial hospital, which is here where I work, when he performed the first open heart surgery on a gentleman named James Cornish, who is a stab victim. And after the surgery, James lived for many years.
Wow, those really are quite the account.
Williams experienced a stroke in 1926 and died 5 years later in 1931. However, I and many other individuals will never forget all that he has done.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about Dr. Williams today. It was great meeting you and talking with you today. This is Bianca signing out. Back to you, Daryl, for the weather.
So, you can obviously see there's a high moving through the Midwest. Means sunny conditions for the entire Midwest states here. And back to you, Fancy Grace.
Fancy Grace, and I'm here today with Gina, the daughter of Willem Mankiller. She is here today to share with us about her motivational mother. Gina's mother was born in Oklahoma on November 18, 1945. In 1985, Mankiller became the first female principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. Her goal, to improve the Cherokee Nation's health care, early education system, and direction. Unfortunately, Wilma passed away in 2010. Here to share about her mother's legacy is Gina.
Having me on the show, Fancy Grace. It's such an honor to be here with you.
Of Women's Heritage Week, your mother is the perfect fit. So let's start off by having you tell us a little background of who your mother was growing up.
My mother was quite the woman, let me tell you. She lived in the Cherokee community, where her school was more than 3 miles away. I think these events in her life are what led her to creating programs such as the community health and the Head Start program within the community.
People, very interesting. Tell us some more about the Cherokees. We hear them in country songs and storybooks, but what's it really like growing up as an Indian in Oklahoma?
She has to tell us all sorts of stories about living in Oklahoma. She writes in her book, which is now on sale, about how cohesive the community was and still is. The adults would go over to friends' houses and play cards and chat a while the kids would go outside and reinvent games. They depended on each other for social wealth and survival. Because of this, my mother had a very extensive network within the Oklahoma area. This became very instrumental in her elections.
What else did your mother do for the Cherokee Nation?
I don't know if we have time for all of that, but one of her biggest contributions was the formation of the Office of Tribal Justice in the U.S. Department of Justice and helped found the Women Empowering Women of Indian Nations.
Busy, wasn't she? Consider your mother to be a push for women's rights. Why do we consider her such a prolific activist?
My mother once said that she received more discrimination as a woman than she ever did as an Indian. The Cherokee people have been pushed around for centuries now. Sometimes change is hard. When your change is sometimes as big as becoming the first woman leader of over 200,000 people and trying to manage a multi-million-dollar budget as my mother did, it can sometimes be a stretch for people, and she always encouraged them to be open-minded to this change. Even when she became sick, she still gave motivational speeches and awarded my mother the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor anyone can have. It was a great celebration for both women and the Cherokee Nation. When my mother passed away, President Obama said, "As the Cherokee Nation's first..."
Next, a word from our sponsors.
I'm Sandra White, and here with me today is Dr. Jonetta B. Cole, the sister of Ma Bean Oshumbetch, better known as the Beach Lady. Hi, Dr. Cole. I'm so glad you could be here with us today. Tell me more about your sister. Well, I'm so glad you could make it here today. Can you please tell us more about your sister?
Thank you. Please just call me Janetta.
Okay, I can do that. Now let's get started. We have recently just passed on the 8th anniversary of your sister's death on September 5th. Although here in the Jacksonville area, she was very well known and would like to spread the word on what a fantastic person she was during this month's heritage around the states. If you could go ahead and give us just a little bit more brief information on her background, that would be wonderful.
Well, before I begin, I would just like to thank you for having me on the show and for showing interest in my sister. To start with, her name was Ma Bean Oshumbetch. As you already stated, there's actually a funny story about her name. Her original given name was Marvine Elizabeth Betch when she was born on January 13th of 1935 in Jacksonville, Florida. She decided to take the R out of her name because of President Reagan. He was stated saying, "Once you've seen one redwood, you've seen them all," and this infuriated her, so that's when the R came out. About 16 or 17 years later, she decided to change her middle name to Oshun, which actually stands for the African goddess of love and the arts, which was fitting for her, but she decided to drop this name after finding out that Elizabeth is the one who started and financed the slave trade. There was no keeping that after that information was exposed. Such a determined woman. She never did marry, so her last name, Betch, stuck with her, which came from her father's German side.
Wow, I didn't realize she had all those name changes. Of course, around here we all know her as the Beach Lady.
Of course. That was the nickname that she gave herself when she became so passionate about saving and preserving the American beach.
And that she did do. Now, I know you touched on the German side, but if I recall correctly, she spent some time over in Germany, didn't she?
Yes, she did. Right after she obtained her degree from Oberlin Conservatory in 1955, she moved to Germany to sing opera. She later returned home in 1965. When she was home, she became extremely involved in the environment and joined many environmentalist groups, 60 to be exact, and she maintained life membership in 10 of them.
So true that she spent her life savings on these groups?
Well, I wouldn't say that she spent it, but yes, she did donate her life savings and her inheritance to environmental organizations. While she was actually sleeping on a lawn chair on the beach until I later bought and gave her an RV to stay in. That beach was her life. Also, did I tell you that my great-grandfather actually obtained that beach the same year Maybeen was born?
No, what a coincidence. I didn't realize that. So you're telling me that the beach and her aged together?
Yep, it is something else. I will never forget the image of my sister standing next to the 60-foot sand dune named Nana, with her 7-foot long dreadlocks and 14-inch nails. She was a sight to see and always believed in being natural. I tell you, it took her years to protect that sand dune, but she was never going to give up.
Yes, well, it's such a fabulous and interesting story. I hear that many are still fighting to start up a museum at the American Beach and are still fighting to preserve it today.
Yes, that is true. It is so nice to see that the legacy of my sister will continue.
Well, I believe that it's time to wrap this up. Do you have any last thoughts or comments that you'd like to share with us?
I would just like to leave on one note. Live simply so that others may simply live, in the words of my sister.
And back to Daryl for an update on the weather.